Jazz blues. I was just improvising on a jazz blues progression. Now the jazz blues progression is different than regular 3-chord blues. It has 5 chords in it actually. I put together a short series here on playing jazz blues piano when you're playing by yourself, playing solo piano. Everything I talk about here is going to be applicable to band playing, but here I'm talking to just pianists playing alone, solo piano, whether you're playing gigs or just playing for your own enjoyment at home. Now to get started, we have to learn 2 things first. We have to learn how to make jazz walking bass lines in our left hand, and we have to learn how to make some jazz chords in our right hand to go with those walking bass lines. Then as we proceed along, we'll add in the 2 extra chords that we need to make the full jazz blues progression. Now to learn these 2 elements that we need for playing the jazz blues, we're going to work with just 3-chord blues. We want to limit ourselves so we can just focus on learning how to make those jazz lines in our left hand and the chords to go with them. Then once we get those together, then we can add in the other 2 chords to get the full jazz blues progression. This is a chord chart for our regular 3-chord blues. It's in the key of C. I'll be explaining everything as we go along in the key of C. You want to play in other keys as well, but C is always a great key to explain things in. Let's take a look at our chords first. When we're playing regular blues piano or boogie-woogie piano, we're generally using dominant 7 chords. Here we're going to turn our dominant 7s into dominant 9s. Here's an easy way to turn any 7th chord into a 9th chord. Now you can do this with any kind of 7th chord, minor 7, major 7, dominant 7. For the blues, we're working with dominant 7th chords, so let's look at it in the context of a dominant 7. Make a C dominant 7 chord and raise the root 1 whole step, and it becomes a C dominant 9 chord. So that's all there is to it, except it's going to sound best if we build our dominant 7 chord from the 3rd or the 7th and then raise the root. So here's what we do. Take that C7 chord again and invert it so that the 3 is on the bottom. So we just go up 1 inversion, and now we raise the root 1 whole step. And we have a beautiful C dominant 9 chord. Let's do that again and put the 7th on the bottom of the chord. Make a C7, rotate it down so the 7th is on the bottom of the chord, and raise the root up 1 whole step. Now we have a beautiful C dominant 9 chord with a 7th on the bottom. Since we're using F dominant 9 and G dominant 9 in this part of the lesson, let's take a look at how we're going to do that. Make an F7 like this, and now we want to put a 3 on the bottom, so let's invert it so the 3's on the bottom, raise the root a whole step. Now we have a beautiful F dominant 9 chord. Same thing with the G. Here's a G7, invert it up so the 3's on the bottom, raise the root a whole step, and there's our G dominant 9 chord. For this part of the lesson we're about to get into, we're going to build our C9 chord like this, with a 7th on the bottom, and our F9 and G9 with a 3rd on the bottom. There's our F9, 3rd on the bottom, and our G9, 3rd on the bottom. Learning jazz walking bass lines is a study unto itself. Now once you learn how to make the walking bass lines, you can add them into all of your playing. If you're playing standards and you want to interject some walking bass lines at certain points, you'll be able to use what you learn here. Now what we do when we make our walking bass lines is we're imitating a bass player. we're going to try to do something that sounds like what a bass player would do when he's playing his bass. What we're going to do is make our walking bass line by doing this. We're going to play the root, then go up to the second, and then the minor third, and then the major third. And this is going to fit our dominant 9 chord. Now, some people say, well, what the heck's the minor third doing with our dominant chord, which has a major third in it? Well, what's happening is the minor third is a chromatic approach to the major third. It just means you're approaching it from a half step below or a half step above. Your target note being this one, the third in this case. So you're just getting the note right below it and slipping in to the target, or right above and slipping into it. So what we have is 1, 2, minor third, major third. So this is going to be our basic walking line. Now we're going to put a couple of variations in it, but this is what we're going to start with. So you want to get your hands on that, and we're going to do the same thing on the F chord. Here's our F chord. We're going to go 1, 2, minor third, major third. So that's going to cover us for those 2 chords. And on the G9, root, 2, minor third, major third. That's going to be our starting point. And as I say, we're going to make some variations on there. But let's just go through the whole progression now and try to play that basic line while you're playing the 9th chords in your right hand. The right hand can do lots of different things. Just to get started here, just play the chord just one time at the beginning of every chord change. So it'll sound like this. So that's a cool jazz bass line, and we want to get a handle on that first, because we're going to kind of lean on that one. We're going to come back and forth to that line. But jazz bass lines aren't made by just playing one line repetitively, like we do when we're playing regular blues piano, shuffles, boogie-woogie piano. There we have one repeating line, and the right hand's free to improvise. Jazz bass players mix it up and do a lot of different things when they're playing. They can get very creative and keep this quarter note moving along in really interesting and melodic ways. So we want to do something similar. We're going to create more than one line that we can play with our left hand, but we're playing piano and doing 2 different things, not just playing bass. So we can't get too carried away, but we can learn a handful of things that we can be using with our left hand and not get too in the way of what we're trying to create with our right hand. Especially when we're improvising, you don't want to have the left hand be too busy so you can't think about what's going on in the right hand. What we're going to do here is start with just 2 different bass lines. Later we'll learn more. We can do different things to really add to the creativeness of our left-hand walking line. But we'll just start with 2 lines to keep it organized and simple so you get the feel of it, see how it works to mix up the bass line in different ways. Here's the other bass line that we're going to use. It's a simple triad. When we play our C9 chord, we're going to go simple triad outline. Same thing on the F, and same thing on the G. So now we have 2 lines to work with. The idea is to mix these 2 lines up arbitrarily any way you want to. And it can be kind of fun to see how many ways you can combine the 2 lines so that they're not sounding repetitive. But this is maybe a little too arbitrary to get started with. So what I've done is written out an arrangement alternating between these 2 lines that we can concentrate on and learn just so you can feel like you're doing something solid. Then after you get your hands on that and get the idea of it, then you can start to mix them up in your own way. You'll see the arrangement up here on your screen, but just come to the website in the blues section and you can download it so you can print it out. Here's what it sounds like. 1, 2, 3, 4. Now let's add some rhythm on our right hand. Instead of just holding a whole note in our right hand, let's add some rhythm. When we play rhythm in jazz, we call it comping, and it means to play rhythmic patterns. So we're going to start out with a common rhythm pattern that we play in jazz. Take it like this. Now the right hand is in this triplet feel. It's feeling this 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. Let's break it down and see what's really happening. The first beats hit together, 1. That second hit comes on the last note of the triplet in that beat. It's going 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. Really slow, see if you get it. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. I'll go to the F chord. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. We're just going to cycle that around, and I'm going to count it slowly, and I'll keep a cycle going. I'm going to go from the 1 chord to the 4 chord. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. Now what we're working toward, the ultimate goal is to be able to improvise, play blues scales and blues cliches while your left hand's playing walking bass lines. Now, it's very similar to regular blues playing. If you've been playing blues with my lessons or whatever you're doing, it's nearly the same, except you've got this left hand has got this walk that does different things. That's different than if you're playing regular blues. You're probably holding down a repeating line while the right hand's doing these different blues scales and blues cliches, that sort of thing. So it's just getting used to a new thing going on in your left hand. Once you feel like you get your left hand going pretty good, try to work in whatever scales and things you're doing already with your right hand. In the next part of the series, we add in the extra chords that make up the full jazz blues progression. It's 2 different chords used in 2 different places. So we're saving that until we get used to the walking bass line, because that adds another layer of complexity to it, and you're changing chords. There's a lot going on. So that's why I just like to start with these 3 chords first. You get the idea of the groove, and then as we add those extra chords, you can just keep that groove going with the 2 extra chords.